Hello, everyone. Welcome to my ComArts presentation. Thank you for coming. For ComArts this year, I decided to curate a series of photos, which I named The Beauty of Silhouettes. Basically, I'm very interested in photography. I only became interested in it last year when I chose to take a photography class with Miss Pixler, but I instantly felt super drawn to it, and I've been taking photos ever since. This year in ComArts, I really wanted to challenge myself and do something new because last year my very first project was very focused on landscapes and taking photos of things and objects around the campus, and I never really ventured out further than that. So when I originally started thinking of my ComArts idea, I wanted to focus on taking photos of people, which is the inspiration I got from photos like these, because I wanted to portray emotion and different faces and different symbolism with different scenery. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to do that. Like the photo above me or next to me with the woman in the car, or the photo of the couple like kissing in black and white. I think that there's a lot of different ways to portray a certain emotion or feeling based off of the expression on people's faces. So I was super interested in that. But first, we had this conceptual self portrait we had to do. So at the beginning of the class, we had a choice between a logo project, which was creating our own logo for a business, and creating a conceptual self portrait in any like form that we wanted to. So I chose the self portrait, and these are some of the final photos that I took. This photo or this project ended up being a lot of experimentation for me. It just with dragging the shutter, and above me there's a photo of using light painting, which is where you click the camera, let it go, and then do a long exposure and move a light in it. So I have my phone camera, and I was just kind of messing around a lot with like different ways to take photos and different ideas I had. So my original idea was to kind of portray the different layers or parts of myself that I feel like make me. And the way I wanted to do that was to actually show multiple versions of me within one photo. And whether or not I really achieved a good job at doing that, I think I did a decent job, but it was kind of just a way for me to try something new. And overall, I like this project, but it definitely didn't help me form my original idea. It just helped me kind of branch out and keep on experimenting. I knew I still wanted to try more. So we also had another project on the side, which was a mural project that we did with a small group. It was a little excursion from the main project where we had to choose as a group collectively an idea and then spray paint it onto these two huge like boards. And so we chose the idea to make this dangling hand, like dangling worlds as if they were in a universe on the string, to kind of like give the idea of like this puppet hand controlling like the universe and things as how they are, but we don't really see it. And honestly, we just thought it was a really cool concept because we were all really interested in space and kind of portraying that. And it was also really fun. It was kind of stressful at first because there were only 9 weeks in the project, but it ended up being a really nice distraction from everything else that was going on besides our main project. And so around this time, like a few weeks in, is when I really got the idea going for shadows. So shadows have always been a really interesting and fascinating element of photography to me. And I kind of kickstarted this curiosity by looking at inspirational photos from artists such as Minor White, which is the hand over that tree stump, Kala Rochilla, if I'm not butchering that, which are kind of the flowing sheets in the top right, and then Olivia Parker, who kind of has the assortment of shadows and objects at the bottom of the slide. And I was really interested in this because I feel like shadows are a really cool way to create something out of nothing. When you have a light, an object in the shadow that's portrayed by it, you can really create something that wasn't originally there and also make a lot of really cool, interesting shapes that kind of mean different things depending on how you look at them. And that's what I wanted to go for. So this was my idea. I kind of wanted to copy off of what was happening. But as I quickly found out, this was not really something I wanted to spend a lot of time on because it was really time consuming. The two photos on the right are me trying to create it, and the left one is me just taking a photo of a shadow that I saw outside. It looked cool, it was interesting, but it wasn't something that I wanted to make my whole project about. just because I feel like it was a little simple. I could have done that any day, anytime, not on the project. Like, it wasn't really something that took a lot of thought. I would just go around and look for shadows. And then the second one, I got those two shots were pretty interesting. I liked those shots, but they took a lot of time to make, and there wasn't a lot of different places I could like project lights, or not even project lights, but just find objects to project the shadows of and like create them in interesting ways. It was something that I kind of got really frustrated with really quickly. Like, that photo in the top right took me a full class or two just to like assemble, or I got a whole series of them, and they didn't look amazing. They were just kind of interesting, and I wasn't really too excited by it. So one day I had this strike of luck where I was shooting downstairs trying the idea that I had mentioned before, when one of my peers, Maddie Norris, who actually became my model for the project, stepped onto the background, or in front of the background, and I was taking photos of her and her silhouette. And I got really intrigued by this because even though the shots were getting very dark and they were poorly lit and they were super blurry and kind of framed weirdly, I saw a lot of potential that these photos had to be captivating. And this is where my like idea really began. This project, or this series of photos, was meant to be an exploration into the world of a silhouette as if they were an actual person. And my hope was kind of to discuss the endlessness that I see in shadows and how it is a device that can be used to explore the reality of human nature, which sounds like a really big concept, but basically I just feel like shadows are kind of infinite in the meaning that you can put into them, because they're darkness. It's nothing in a sense, but it's kind of what you get out of it, or at least that's what I got from it. So I kind of wanted to get different shots of Maddie and her silhouette in different forms and different poses, with different colors to kind of represent that. And I got really like intrigued in this idea of like a circular light, and that was kind of like what I ended up going with. So these are the first like 5 or so photos that I took, and it kind of led me to like keep on going with this idea, and it became my whole project. So these were the main tools I had. I had a strobe light, which is the one in the top center. I had this snoot, which is the top left and the top right, just two different angles. And then I had a background, a white background, and I had these little color like circles that I could put in the snoot to kind of project the colors. So if I go back, that's how I got the colors for these shots. And this was all I used besides my camera. It was a really simple project, and besides taking the photos downstairs in the theater room and using these tools, the only other thing I did was edit, which took a lot of time, but that was the main part of my project. So these are photos of me working. The first one is just me editing. I spent the entire last few weeks just editing and editing and editing, because the photos were interesting on their own, but I wanted to see what I could add to them, because there was a lot of color, a lot of different lighting choices, a lot of different decisions I made that ended up kind of turning the photos I liked into photos that I really loved. And then on the right is me taking photos of Maddie. That was kind of the main thing I did for most of the weeks, and there were a lot of times where I would take hundreds and hundreds of photos and I wouldn't really like anything, and it took a long time to find the certain poses, the certain like dresses. I had Maddie wear like different outfits and use different objects and kind of take photos of those and take the shadows until I got the photos I really wanted. And there were a lot of problems. I kind of mentioned it before, but here's some examples. Like, some of the photos were really framed weirdly. I didn't really like how they looked. The silhouette ended up being a huge problem because it looked super blurred at first, like in the bottom left corner, or the bottom right corner, I mean. Like that photo, it just looked really stretched to me and really blurred and not kind of what I wanted. Some of them were out of focus, some of them were super dark, and it was just really frustrating at first because I spent so much time just taking photo after photo after photo, and I didn't really like how it looked, and it just wasn't coming out the way I wanted it to. So I ended up just kind of reshooting for a really long time until I started to get the hang of it. And it was a really simple process, like I mentioned before, but it was definitely hard to manage because I didn't know what I was doing at first. But it was fun because once I did manage to figure out what I was doing, I kind of had an idea every time I went in to shoot of what I wanted, and I ended up getting stuff that I really liked. So here are the transitions. They look really different, but I actually like how these photos turned out. These are three of my favorite photos from the entire series. Um, so on the left is the original photo I took, and on the right is the photo that I edited and ended up like producing finally. And this was super interesting because I usually like to take photos of, like I mentioned before, last year I was really into landscapes, and I still am into like nature photography and that sort. But I was so blown away by how much I could do on Lightroom, which is how I edited the photos. These photos look completely different. And I thought that that was so cool because it just gave me the power to really create a world that I wanted to create. So kind of with like the middle photo with Maddie in the dress with the hat, like I was thinking of kind of this void almost with the purple like circle behind her, and getting sucked into like that world almost. And then with like the light one with her hand like this, I was really like excited by the coloring that I was able to get, and also the really bright area of light behind her hair. And I just loved the shapes. I loved everything that I was able to like put out, and I especially loved the colors. That was what I loved most about the bottom photo. And basically Lightroom just kind of allowed me to capture this sense of wonder and mysticism that was otherwise lacking in the photos, and allowed me to create something that was really beautiful to me, at least. And so, yeah, overall, I really love this class. I really wish we had the full year to explore our ideas and our creativity, because I think I could have created something that was so much more fascinating than this. Not to say this is bad. I just really think I could have gone further than this, but I'm really happy with what I made in the 9 weeks. And I'd also really like to thank Mrs. Pixler, because she was someone who really supported me throughout the entire thing, who got me the snoot, who kind of helped me when I was struggling to edit. And yeah, I don't think it would have been the same without her. These are some of the final photos I took that like I felt were the strongest, but overall it was a great project. And I'd like to thank Maddie Norris as well, because she was the model for all these photos, and without her I don't know who else I would have asked. But hopefully you can garner what I did out of these photos, kind of the beauty in shapes, silhouettes, and darkness. There's an idea that darkness is associated with the bad in the world, but light needs dark as much as goodness needs the bad, and that's kind of how I like to see it. They create one another, and my project was meant to allow people to step into that world and explore the meaning of darkness itself. But thank you guys for listening to my presentation.